The Empire had watched Earth for 300 years. They had built their observation stations behind the dark side of Jupiter, hidden from human telescopes and satellites. From there, they studied humanity like scientists studying insects under glass. They watched humans discover electricity. They watched them build cars and planes. They watched them split the atom and walk on their own moon. And through it all, they waited. Ambassador stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council on Prime, the capital world of the 12 allied species that ruled this part of the galaxy. His 4 eyes moved across the holographic display showing Earth's military forces. Tanks, jets, aircraft carriers, nuclear missiles. To him, these were toys. Children playing with dangerous objects they barely understood. The humans have reached the threshold, announced to the assembled council members. Their technology has advanced enough to make them useful, but not enough to pose any threat. I recommend we begin integration protocols immediately. High Counselor Hen leaned forward in her chair. Her scaled face showed what passed for a smile among her kind. She had overseen the integration of 47 worlds during her long career. Not once had a species successfully resisted. "What is your assessment of their combat capabilities?" she asked. Made a dismissive gesture with his 3-fingered hand. "Primitive chemical propulsion weapons, basic nuclear technology. Their most advanced spacecraft can barely reach their neighboring planets. They have no shields, no faster-than-light capability, no energy weapons. A single cruiser could neutralize their entire military in less than 1 planetary rotation." The council members exchanged satisfied glances. Another world would soon join their empire. Another species would provide labor and resources for the greater glory of the Galactic Council. This was how it had always been. This was how it would always be. But they had made a terrible mistake. They had underestimated humanity. 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that appeared on no map and existed in no official record, Admiral Samuel Grant stood before a wall of screens showing real-time data from across the solar system. He was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short in military fashion and eyes that had seen things most humans could never imagine. "Status report," he said quietly. Lieutenant Commander Owen stepped forward. She was 38, one of the tactical minds in the hidden program, and one of the few people who knew the full truth about what humanity faced. "All 14 alien observation posts are accounted for, sir. We have continuous tracking on each one. They still don't know we can see them." Samuel nodded slowly, and the defense grid. 712 installations are fully operational. Lunar batteries are charged and ready. Orbital platforms are in position. Asteroid belt stations report green across the board. Paused, her voice dropping slightly. "We're ready, Admiral. After all these years, we're finally ready." Samuel turned to face the main display, which showed Earth floating in the darkness of space. His home, his responsibility. The weight of 8 billion lives rested on his shoulders, and he felt every single one of them. The secret had been kept for 90 years. In 1952, a scout ship had crashed in the frozen wilderness of Siberia. The Soviet team that found it had expected wreckage. What they discovered instead changed the course of human history. The ship's computer core was damaged but not destroyed. Soviet scientists, working in absolute secrecy, managed to extract fragments of data, star maps, technical specifications, communication frequencies, and most importantly, intercepted messages that revealed Earth was being watched and evaluated for conquest. The Cold War had been at its peak, but this discovery transcended politics. Soviet leaders reached out to their American counterparts through back channels. The message was simple: we have a bigger problem than each other. Within a year, a secret agreement was signed. The world's major powers would continue their public disagreements, their proxy wars, their ideological battles. But behind closed doors, they would work together on a single project. They would prepare humanity to face the coming storm. 90 years of secret cooperation followed. Scientists from rival nations shared discoveries. Engineers from countries that publicly threatened each other worked side by side. Trillions of dollars were hidden in black budgets, funneled into research and construction that would never be acknowledged. The crashed ship had given humanity a starting point. From there, human ingenuity did the rest. They reverse-engineered the alien alloys. They decoded the shield frequencies. They figured out how to detect faster-than-light signatures. And most importantly, they developed weapons that operated on principles the Galactic Council had theorized about but never achieved. Dr. Cole had led the weapons program for the past 40 years. He was 73 now, a physicist who had given his entire life to a project the public would never know about. He stood beside Admiral Grant, watching the screens with quiet satisfaction. "They're going to send a diplomatic ship first," said. "That's their pattern. Observe, evaluate, then offer the choice between submission and destruction." "And when we refuse?" Samuel asked. "They'll send a fleet, probably 50 ships for a first response. They've never needed more than that." Samuel turned to face the old scientist. "Will our weapons work?" Smiled slightly. "Admiral, our weapons will do more than work. They've been using the same basic technology for 10,000 years. They've had no competition, no reason to innovate. We've had 90 years of desperate motivation and the combined genius of an entire species. Our directed energy weapons operate on quantum principles they haven't even discovered yet. Our shields use dimensional folding they think is impossible. We're not just going to defeat them, we're going to terrify them." Across the facility, thousands of men and women worked at their stations. They were soldiers, scientists, engineers, and technicians. They came from every country on Earth. They spoke different languages, followed different religions, held different political beliefs. But they shared one common purpose: the survival of their species. None of them had asked for this responsibility. None of them had chosen to carry this burden. But when the time came, they would stand together. They would fight together. And if necessary, they would die together. Admiral Grant looked at the image of Earth one more time. Somewhere up there, hidden in the darkness between worlds, they were making their final preparations. They were rehearsing their speeches of conquest. They were polishing their weapons of intimidation. They were certain of their victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Samuel turned to, "Send the word to all stations. We're moving to full alert status. The next few weeks are going to determine the future of our entire species." Nodded and began transmitting the orders. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden defenders prepared for the battle that would change everything. After 90 years of watching and waiting, the time for action had finally arrived. The Galactic Council thought they were coming to claim another helpless world. They thought Earth would be just another easy conquest in their long history of domination. They thought humans would bow down and accept their fate like every other species before them. They were wrong, and they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere like a god coming down from heaven. It was massive, nearly half a mile long, its hull gleaming with metals that human science could not identify. The ship moved slowly, deliberately, designed to inspire awe and fear in the primitive species below. Ambassador stood at the main viewport, watching the blue and green world grow larger beneath him. He had performed this ritual on dozens of planets. The approach was always the same: show them your power, demonstrate your superiority, then give them the choice that was not really a choice at all. "Broadcasting our arrival on all frequencies," his aide reported. "The humans are responding. They have designated a landing zone in a region they call Nevada." Made a sound of approval. At least these creatures understood protocol. Some species had been foolish enough to fire weapons at approaching diplomatic vessels. Those species no longer existed. The ship landed in the desert, its massive engines kicking up clouds of sand and dust. When the air cleared, saw them waiting. Hundreds of humans in formal attire, surrounded by their primitive military vehicles and soldiers with chemical propulsion weapons. Cameras floated in the air, broadcasting this moment to every corner of their small world. Descended the landing ramp with practiced dignity. His ceremonial robes flowed behind him, silver and gold threads catching the harsh desert sunlight. He was flanked by 12 warriors in full combat armor, their energy weapons held casually at their sides. This display of force was traditional. It reminded new species of their place in the galactic order. At the front of the human delegation stood a woman. She was neither tall nor physically imposing, but something in her posture suggested strength. Her dark hair was touched with gray, and her eyes watched with an expression he could not quite read. "I am ambassador of the Empire, voice of the Galactic Council," he announced. His translation device converted his words into the dominant human language. "Who speaks for this world?" The woman stepped forward. "I am President of the United States. I have been authorized to speak on behalf of all Earth's nations." Noted this with mild surprise. Most primitive worlds were divided into competing factions that made negotiations complicated. It seemed the humans had at least managed to present a unified front. Not that it would matter. "President," began, his voice carrying across the silent gathering. "The Galactic Council has observed your species for many generations. We have watched you grow from simple tool users to a civilization capable of reaching beyond your own atmosphere. This progress has not gone unnoticed." He paused for effect, as he always did at this point. "The Council has decided that Earth is ready to join the greater galactic community. You will be given the honor of serving the Council's interests. Your resources will fuel the expansion of civilization across the stars. Your people will provide labor for the great works that benefit all species under Council protection." Remained silent, her expression unchanged. "In return," continued, "you will receive the benefits of Council membership, protection from external threats, access to technology beyond your current understanding, a place, however small, in the grand tapestry of galactic civilization." He spread his arms in a gesture meant to convey generosity. "This is not a request, President. This is an offer that has been made to hundreds of species before you. Those who accepted now thrive under Council guidance. Those who refused—" He let the sentence hang in the air. "There are no species who refused." The silence stretched for a long moment, waited for the expected response. Fear, anger, desperate attempts at negotiation, pleas for mercy. He had seen them all before. What he did not expect was for her to smile. "Ambassador," she said, her voice calm and clear, "on behalf of humanity, I have prepared a response to your generous offer." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, no larger than her thumb. Before could react, she pressed the single button on its surface. Nothing seemed to happen for a moment. Then's communication device began screaming with emergency alerts. His warriors looked up in confusion as the sky itself seemed to change. The air around the ship shimmered with energy, and suddenly a containment field surrounded the vessel, cutting it off from any escape. "What is this?" demanded, his composure cracking for the first time. Took a step toward him. Behind her, the human soldiers had not moved. They had not raised their weapons. They simply stood and watched with expressions of grim satisfaction. "For 90 years we have known about you," said. "We recovered one of your scout ships. We decoded your communications. We learned that you were watching us, waiting for the right moment to add Earth to your empire." Felt something he had not experienced in centuries of diplomatic service, genuine fear. "For 90 years, every nation on this planet has worked together in secret. We studied your technology. We analyzed your weaknesses. We built defenses you cannot imagine and weapons you cannot comprehend." His voice hardened. "You came here expecting to find victims. You found us instead." She gestured at the sky, where the containment field crackled with energy that sensors could not identify. Here is humanity's response to your offer, Ambassador. Leave our solar system within 72 hours. Return to your council and tell them that Earth is not a resource to be harvested. We are not subjects to be ruled. We are not slaves to be exploited. Stepped closer until she was looking directly into his 4 eyes. Tell your council this. We are humanity. We have been waiting for you, and we are ready. Struggled to find words. In 10,000 years of expansion, no species had ever responded like this. No primitive world had ever demonstrated technology capable of trapping a diplomatic vessel. You are making a terrible mistake, he managed to say. The Council commands fleets of thousands of ships. You cannot hope to resist. Did not flinch. We don't hope, Ambassador. We prepare. 90 years of preparation. 8 billion people united by a single purpose. You have no idea what you're facing. She turned her back on him and began walking away. Over her shoulder, she added, Your ship will be released once you're outside Earth's orbital space. I suggest you use your 72 hours wisely. As rejoined her delegation, stood frozen in the desert sun. His warriors looked to him for guidance, but he had none to give. For the first time in his long career, he did not know what to do. The humans had not begged. They had not threatened empty resistance. They had demonstrated power and issued demands of their own. Everything he thought he knew about this species was wrong. As he walked back up the ramp to his imprisoned ship, began composing his report to the High Council. They would not believe him. They would think he had gone mad, but he would tell them the truth anyway. Earth was not what they expected, and if the Council was foolish enough to send a fleet, suspected they would learn this lesson in the most painful way possible. The message from Ambassador arrived at Prime and threw the Galactic Council into chaos. For 3 days, the 12 allied species debated what to do. Some called for immediate military action. Others urged caution. A few suggested that had simply lost his mind. War Master stood before the council chamber, his massive frame casting a shadow across the holographic display of Earth. He was the supreme commander of all military forces, a warrior who had crushed rebellions on 100 worlds. This is an insult that cannot be ignored, he declared, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. A primitive species has threatened an ambassador of the council. They have demonstrated unknown technology that they must have stolen from a more advanced civilization. We must respond with overwhelming force. High Counselor Hen raised a hand for silence. She had spent the past 3 days studying every piece of data had transmitted. What she found troubled her deeply. The energy signatures from the containment field do not match any known technology, she said carefully. Not from any of our allied species, not from any civilization we have ever encountered. On made a dismissive gesture. Then they received help from someone outside council space. It does not matter. Our weapons have defeated every enemy we have ever faced. Have they? Hen asked. In 10,000 years, we have never faced an enemy who surprised us. We have never encountered technology we could not understand. Perhaps we have become overconfident. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Silenced them with a roar. Enough! I will take the third fleet to Earth myself. 50 warships against a species that was throwing rocks at each other a few thousand years ago. This will be over before it begins. Hen looked at the War Master with something close to pity. I hope you are right for all our sakes. 2 weeks later, the third fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 warships, each one capable of devastating a planet's surface. At their head flew the flagship Conquest of Stars, the most powerful vessel in the Navy. Fleet Commander Al stood on the bridge, watching the distant blue dot that was his target. He was a veteran of 17 integration campaigns. Not once had he lost a ship. Not once had he faced resistance that lasted more than a few hours. "All ships report ready for combat," his tactical officer announced. "Human defensive positions identified, primitive orbital stations and ground-based installations, nothing that poses a threat to our shields." Al nodded with satisfaction. "Begin the approach, standard conquest formation. Let them see what real power looks like." The fleet moved inward, passing the orbits of the outer planets. They detected no resistance, no defensive movements. The humans seemed to be waiting. "Overconfident fools," Al muttered. "They had their chance to surrender. Now they will learn the price of defiance." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Samuel Grant watched the approaching fleet on the main display. Around him, the command center hummed with quiet activity. Men and women at their stations, ready to execute orders that would determine the fate of their species. 50 ships, Owens observed, just as predicted. Samuel nodded. "They're arrogant, they think this will be easy." He turned to face the room. "All stations, this is Admiral Grant. The enemy fleet has entered the solar system. Execute Protocol Omega. All weapons are authorized to fire." Across the solar system, humanity's hidden defenses came to life. The first shot came from an installation hidden in the asteroid belt, disguised as a chunk of rock among millions of others. A beam of pure energy, operating on quantum principles that science considered theoretical, lanced across the void and struck the lead cruiser. The cruiser's shields, which had never been breached in 3 centuries of service, offered no resistance. The beam passed through them as if they did not exist and cut the ship cleanly in half. 2,000 warriors died before they even knew they were under attack. Al stared at his display in disbelief. What happened?" Before anyone could answer, more beams fired. From the moon, from disguised satellites, from stations scattered throughout the inner solar system. Each beam found its target with perfect accuracy. Each beam ignored the shields that had protected ships for 10,000 years. In 30 seconds, 12 ships were destroyed. In 1 minute, 20. The fleet that had never known defeat was being slaughtered. "Return fire," Al screamed. "All ships return fire." The weapons blazed. Plasma bolts and particle beams raced toward the human positions. But the human installations had shields of their own, shields that bent space around them and redirected the incoming fire into empty void. "Our weapons are having no effect," the tactical officer reported, his voice cracking with fear. "Commander, their technology, it's not possible." Another volley of human weapons fire tore through the fleet. 3 more ships vanished in silent explosions. The survivors broke formation, attempting to flee in different directions, but the human targeting systems tracked each one with cold efficiency. "Retreat," Al finally ordered. "All ships retreat immediately, jump to faster-than-light any heading." The remaining ships activated their faster-than-light drives. Some made it to safety. Others were destroyed before they could complete the jump. Of the 50 warships that had entered the solar system expecting easy victory, only 19 escaped. On the bridge of the conquest of stars, Al watched his fleet die around him. This was impossible. This could not be happening. No primitive species had ever done this. No enemy had ever hurt them this badly. His ship shuddered as a glancing blow damaged the rear sections. Alarms screamed. Crew members rushed to contain the damage. "Jump successful," the navigation officer reported as the stars stretched and blurred. "We're clear of the system." Al slumped in his command chair, unable to process what had just happened. 31 ships lost, over 60,000 warriors killed, and they had not even reached Earth. The humans had been ready. They had been more than ready. They had been waiting. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, cheering erupted as the last enemy ships fled. 90 years of preparation had paid off. Humanity had faced the might of the Galactic Council and won. But Admiral Grant did not celebrate. He watched the retreating ships on his display, his expression grim. "Sir," asked, "we won, why don't you look happy?" Samuel turned to face her. "Because this was just the beginning. They underestimated us this time. They won't make that mistake again. The next fleet they send will be larger, much larger." He looked at the screens showing Earth, peaceful and blue, unaware of the battle that had just been fought in its defense. "We've shown them we can fight. Now we have to show them we can win, and that's going to be much harder." The celebration died down as the weight of his words sank in. They had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. And somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was already planning its revenge. The survivors of the Third Fleet limped back to Prime with news that shook the foundations of the Galactic Council. 31 ships destroyed, 60,000 warriors dead, and they had not even managed to damage a single human installation. War Master On refused to believe the reports at first. He accused Fleet Commander Al of cowardice, of incompetence, of somehow conspiring with the enemy. But the sensor recordings did not lie. The images of ships being cut apart by weapons that should not exist played on every screen in the council chamber. High Counselor Hen watched the recordings for the 100th time, her mind struggling to understand what she was seeing. "The energy beams operate on quantum entanglement principles," her chief scientist explained. "We theorized such weapons were possible, but we abandoned the research centuries ago because we could not make them work. The humans have not only made them work, they have deployed them across their entire solar system." How undemanded. "They are a primitive species, they should not have this technology." "They developed it themselves," Hen said quietly. "That is the only explanation that fits the data. For 90 years, while we watched them and thought they were helpless, they were preparing. They knew we were coming, and they built weapons specifically designed to defeat us." The council chamber fell silent. For 10,000 years, the Empire had expanded without serious opposition. They had grown comfortable in their power. They had stopped innovating, stopped pushing the boundaries of science. Why bother when no enemy could challenge them? And now a species they had dismissed as primitive had humiliated them, had killed 60,000 of their warriors, had proven that the mighty Galactic Council was not as invincible as they believed. "We will send a larger fleet," On said, but his voice lacked conviction. 1,000 ships, 10,000, we will overwhelm them with numbers." "And how many will we lose?" Hen asked. "How many warriors will die against weapons we cannot defend against? How many ships will we sacrifice before we admit that we cannot win this war?" On Earth, the mood was very different. The battle had been fought in the cold void of space, far from any human eyes, but the results were being celebrated across the planet. For the first time in history, the people of Earth learned the truth about what their governments had been hiding. President stood in the White House press room, facing cameras that would broadcast her words to every nation. "For nearly a century, your governments worked together in secret," she announced. "Scientists from countries that were publicly enemies cooperated on the most important project in human history. Engineers, soldiers, and ordinary citizens contributed to this effort, often without knowing what they were truly building." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Last week, an alien fleet entered our solar system with orders to conquer Earth. They expected easy victory. Instead, they found humanity waiting for them. Our defensive installations destroyed 31 enemy warships before the survivors fled. We lost no ships. We lost no lives. We won." The world erupted in celebration. In New York, people danced in Times Square. In Tokyo, crowds gathered to cheer. In Lagos and London and Ayers, strangers embraced each other, united by the knowledge that humanity had faced extinction and survived. But not everyone celebrated. Admiral Samuel Grant sat in his office deep underground, reviewing tactical data from the battle. Dr. Cole sat across from him, his old face showing the same concern. "They'll be back," Samuel said, "and next time they'll know what they're facing. They'll adapt." Nodded slowly. "Our weapons worked because they were unexpected. They've been using the same technology for 10,000 years. They've had no reason to innovate, but now they have a reason. Give them a few years and they'll develop countermeasures." "So what do we do?" Smiled slightly. "The same thing we've been doing for 90 years. We keep working, we keep improving, we stay ahead of them." Lieutenant Commander Owens knocked on the door and entered. "Sir, you need to see this. We're picking up long-range communications from the... They're debating what to do next." Samuel followed her to the main command center, where analysts were monitoring intercepted alien transmissions. The translation was imperfect, but the meaning was clear. The Galactic Council was divided. Some wanted to send a massive fleet to crush Earth. Others argued that the cost would be too high. A few were even suggesting something unprecedented: negotiation. "They're scared," observed. "For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy they couldn't easily defeat. They don't know how to handle it." Samuel studied the transmissions carefully. "The ones calling for negotiation, can we identify them?" "High Counselor Hen seems to be leading that faction. According to our intelligence, she's been the voice of caution from the beginning." Samuel thought for a long moment. They had two choices: continue the war and face mounting losses, or find another way. If humanity could encourage the second option, they might avoid a conflict that could still end in Earth's destruction. "Get me a secure channel to President," he said. "We may have an opportunity here." Across the galaxy, High Counselor Hen was having similar thoughts. She studied reports on human history, trying to understand this strange species that had all expectations. What she found surprised her. Humans were constantly at war with each other. Their history was filled with conflict, violence, and destruction. Yet when faced with an external threat, they had united with remarkable speed and efficiency. Every nation had contributed to their defense project. Every faction had put aside its differences for the common goal of survival. "They fight each other constantly," Hen said to her aide. "Yet they are capable of cooperation on a scale we have never seen. How do they do it?" Her aide had no answer. Hen continued reading. She learned about human creativity, their ability to innovate and adapt. She learned about their stubbornness, their refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. She learned about their capacity for both great cruelty and great kindness. And slowly, she began to understand why the humans had succeeded where every other species had failed. They were not unified by nature. They had no hive mind, no genetic programming for cooperation. They chose to work together when it mattered. They chose to put aside their differences and fight for their survival. That choice, that ability to overcome their own divisions, was something the Galactic Council had never faced before, and Hen was beginning to suspect it was something they could never defeat. She made her decision. She would reach out to the humans. She would propose something that had never been done in 10,000 years of Council history. She would offer peace between equals. Whether the rest of the Council would accept such a radical idea remained to be seen. But Hen knew one thing for certain: the old ways of conquest and domination were over. Humanity had changed everything. And somehow, despite all the danger, despite all the uncertainty, that thought did not frighten her. It gave her hope. 6 months passed after the battle that changed the galaxy. The Galactic Council remained divided, unable to agree on how to respond to the impossible situation Earth had created. War Master On continued to demand military action, but his support dwindled with each passing week. Too many species had begun to question whether the cost of conquering Earth was worth paying. High Counselor Hen worked quietly behind the scenes, building alliances and gathering support for a different approach. For the first time in 10,000 years, she proposed that the Council negotiate with a species as equals rather than subjects. Many called her a traitor. Others called her wise. The debate consumed the council chambers for months. Finally, the decision was made. A diplomatic vessel would be sent to Earth, not to deliver ultimatums, but to explore the possibility of peace. Hen chose the ambassador herself, a career diplomat named Eth who had opposed the integration policy from the beginning. The ship that approached Earth this time came alone. No warships escorted it. No weapons were charged. It was a gesture of trust, or perhaps desperation, that had never shown such vulnerability before. Admiral Samuel Grant watched the ship's approach from the command center. The past 6 months had been busy. Human scientists had continued improving their weapons. New defensive installations had been built. Earth was stronger than ever. But Samuel knew that strength alone would not guarantee humanity's future. Eventually, the galaxy would find a way to challenge them. The only path to lasting security was diplomacy. "They're requesting permission to land," Owens reported. "Same location as before, Nevada." Samuel nodded. "Grant them clearance, and tell the president we're ready." The diplomatic vessel landed in the desert under the watchful eyes of human defense systems. Ambassador Eth descended the ramp slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. He was followed by only 2 aides. No warriors, no weapons, nothing that could be seen as a threat. President waited for him as she had waited for 6 months earlier. But this time the atmosphere was different. There was tension, certainly, but also something else. Hope, perhaps, or at least the possibility of hope. "Ambassador Eth said formally, 'Welcome to Earth.'" Eth inclined his head in what humans would recognize as a bow. "President, I bring greetings from the Galactic Council and a message that I believe will surprise you." They moved to a conference room in Geneva, where leaders from every nation had gathered. Admiral Grant stood at his side, as did Dr. Cole. Around the table sat presidents and prime ministers, generals and scientists, all watching the alien diplomat with cautious curiosity. Eth stood before them and spoke words that had never been spoken by a council representative. "The Galactic Council recognizes Earth as a sovereign world," he announced. "We acknowledge that our previous approach was mistaken. You have demonstrated capabilities that we did not believe possible for a species at your level of development. More importantly, you have shown a capacity for unity and innovation that surpasses anything we have encountered." He paused, his 4 eyes moving across the assembled human leaders. "We do not come as conquerors today. We come as potential partners. The galaxy faces many challenges, threats that even the Council cannot handle alone. Your species has proven itself capable of meeting challenges that would have destroyed others. We believe that together we could accomplish great things." Exchanged glances with Samuel before responding. "Ambassador, 6 months ago, your council tried to enslave humanity. You sent a fleet to destroy us. Now you want to be partners. You'll understand if we're skeptical." "I understand completely," Eth replied. "Trust cannot be given freely after what has happened. It must be earned. The Council is prepared to offer guarantees, non-aggression treaties, technology sharing, full representation in Council decisions, and most importantly, the complete abolition of the integration protocols that have subjugated hundreds of species." A murmur ran through the room. The integration protocols were the foundation of the Empire. To abolish them would transform the entire galactic order. "Why?" asked. "Why would you give up so much?" Eth was quiet for a moment. "Because we have no choice. The old ways are over. Humanity has proven that conquest is no longer sustainable. If we continue as before, we will eventually face defeat, either from you or from another species that follows your example. The only path forward is cooperation." The negotiations lasted for weeks. Humanity demanded much, and the Council agreed to nearly everything. Treaties were drafted and revised. Details were debated and settled. Slowly, a new relationship between Earth and the galaxy began to take shape. On the day the final treaties were signed, Admiral Samuel Grant submitted his resignation. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war that, thanks to human determination and alien wisdom, might never come. "You did it, sir," said as he packed his few personal belongings. "You saved humanity." Samuel shook his head. "We all did it. Every scientist who worked on the project, every soldier who stood ready to fight, every citizen who paid taxes that secretly funded our defenses." He smiled slightly. "I was just the one giving orders at the end. The real heroes are the millions of people who made this possible." He handed a small case containing his rank insignia. "You're in charge now, Vice Admiral Owens. Keep them ready. Keep them watching. The galaxy is a big place and we've made a lot of new friends, but we've also made ourselves a target. Someone out there might decide to test us." "We'll be ready, sir," promised. President gave a final address to mark the occasion. She stood before the United Nations, speaking to a world that now knew its place among the stars. 1 year ago, an empire came to Earth expecting to find victims. They thought we would bow down and accept their rule like every other species before us. They were wrong. Her voice carried across the silent chamber. "We did not bow, we did not break, we did not surrender. Instead, we showed them what humanity is capable of. We showed them that when we are threatened, we stand together. When we are challenged, we rise to meet it. When we are told we cannot succeed, we prove the doubters wrong." She looked at the camera, knowing that billions of people were watching. "Today, we sign treaties of peace and partnership with the Galactic Council. Today, we take our place among the civilizations of the galaxy. But let no one forget the lesson we taught them. Let no one forget the message we sent." President of the United States spoke the words that would echo through history. "We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have survived wars and disasters. We have survived everything the universe has thrown at us, and we have emerged stronger each time. To any who would threaten us, to any who would try to conquer or destroy us, we say this: we are ready for you. We have always been ready, and we always will be." The applause that followed lasted for 10 minutes, but barely heard it. She was looking at the alien delegation, at the representatives of species that had once thought themselves masters of the galaxy. They were watching her with something she had never expected to see in alien eyes. Respect, and perhaps even a little fear. That was good, thought. Let them respect us. Let them fear what we might become. As long as they remembered that humanity would never be conquered, the peace would hold. And somewhere in the stars, watching from observation posts they no longer bothered to hide, the beings of the Galactic Council transmitted a simple message back to their. The humans are ready, and the universe will never be the same.